There's been a lot of hype about the Kove 450 Rally for the last year and a half. Some people claim it's the ultimate adventure bike unicorn we've all been waiting for, while others seem to think that it's a bit of a disappointment. Recently, I got to try one out for myself to find out if it's really as good as people claim. Please stay tuned for my non-biased, non-sponsored review of the Kove 450 Rally. Let's talk about some context. Off-road, street-legal motorcycles can be lumped into three broad categories. First, we have street-legal dirt bikes, such as the KTM 500 EXC and CRF 450L. True dual sports, such as the CRF 300L, DRZ 400, and DR 650. And then we have adventure bikes, such as the Tenere 700, Africa Twin, and many others. The Kove combines elements from all three categories, which makes it a bit of everything and nothing all at once. It also doesn't really have any comparable bikes. So, let's talk about how I felt riding it. First of all, anyone who has ridden a dirt bike will feel right at home on it, with its flat, high seat and familiar relationship between the pegs, bars, and seat. The bars are rubber mounted, the pegs large, and the seat far better than any dirt bike seat, although still not particularly awesome. While riding, I felt right at home, standing or sitting as a 6'1" rider. In my opinion, Kove really nailed the ergonomics on this bike, and it's remarkable considering that it holds 8 gallons of fuel and, in my opinion, is very aesthetically pleasing. The Kove has 12 inches of suspension travel, front and rear, with components made by Yuan that look suspiciously similar to the Showa components you'd expect to find on a newer Honda CRF. Most of the reviews that I've read or watched state that the suspension is quite harsh. This wasn't my experience. I found it far more plush than what comes on any street-legal dirt bike, although it is much stiffer than what any dual sport or adventure bike comes with. This is really a bike that demands to be ridden to get its full experience. On sand, rough trails, and on dirt and paved roads, the suspension worked very well. It was plush enough over potholes and small imperfections in the road to be smooth, while still refraining from blowing through the stroke on tougher terrain. The Kove does a good job carrying its dry 320-pound weight and feels lighter than what it really is. The Kove has front and rear ABS that is easy enough to turn on, although I wish it didn't reset every time you turn off the key and that you didn't have to go through a couple menus to do it. Beyond the ABS, the braking performance on it was overwhelmingly average. It wasn't particularly noteworthy for being good or bad, but they were adequate for the job. Kove is powered by a 449cc, 6-speed, liquid-cooled engine that also has an oil cooler. It is said that it's tuned for longevity and not so much performance. If you're expecting the download torque hit that you get from a 450 or 500 dirt bike, or even the torque that you get on a DR 650, you'll be disappointed. What it is instead is a bike that demands to be revved like a small bore 250 dirt bike. When you rev it and you let it eat, it actually is a fairly powerful engine. I suspect most complaints are from people who have never ridden small bore bikes and just expect it to have some torque and want to lug it. But power-wise, I was relatively impressed when considering that it has very reasonable service intervals. For a 2024 model, the Kove is lacking features like traction control and cruise control, although it does have ABS and the onboard dash/computer setup is quite comprehensive. I know some riders really nerd out on the computer and tech stuff. I don't. I still routinely ride carbureted analog bikes and find them to be plenty fast. So I appreciate that the Kove has some semblance of simplicity when compared to the other bikes. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Kove is a Chinese company, and the bike is made in China. I think many of us have had Chinese pit bikes over the years, myself included, and found them to be terrible in terms of build quality and performance. I'm pleased to report that the build quality of the Kove is vastly superior to any of those bikes. It is in fact comparable to the major OEMs. Nothing on the bike feels cheap, although, like I said, some of the components do seem to be strongly inspired by their Japanese counterparts. Long-term reliability of the Kove continues to be a question, as it is with any new bike, although most rider reports seem to be positive. I've heard about some potential clutch issues, and the bike I rode did have a slipping clutch on it by the end of the day. With that said, it was a used bike and it had been ridden fairly hard. And I've burnt out clutches on all of my bikes, so I'm not going to read into that a whole awful lot. What I do, however, worry about in the reliability department is, will Kove still be around in 5 years? More importantly, in 5 years' time, will they have set up an OEM parts network similar to what the major manufacturers have? And let's say they come out with a new 450 Rally model, will they still be supporting the old one, or will existing owners be hung out to dry? There's no doubt the Kove 450 Rally is an impressive motorcycle and is a capable off-roader, and it's also reasonably comfortable cruising on pavement for long distances, and that fuel range is unmatchable for any bike. But the question remains, is it the right bike for you? If you like to ride hard off-road and aren't too worried about road manners and street performance, the street legal dirt bike is probably the better buy for you. Alternatively, if you just want to tootle around off-road and explore and have okay street performance, then an actual dual sport is probably the better bike. And lastly, if you mostly want to ride on the street, maybe the range of the Kove is what's attracting you, I would suggest that you consider a true adventure bike. With that said, if you're the kind of rider who wants to ride hard off-road, have some street comfort, and have an absolutely unbelievable range, the Kove is a great choice and is really one of the only bikes that you can do that with out of the box without having to build it yourself. So, will I be buying one? I've been riding and building a very modified DR650 for the last 5 years, and it's been an excellent adventure bike. The Kove 450 is the first bike that has me thinking about moving on from my DR650. However, there's two big things holding me back that we've already discussed, and it is, of course, the somewhat unknown reliability and the lack of a major parts replacement network. Those are two things that the DR650 does exceedingly well. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it. If you're interested in seeing a comparison between my built DR650 and the Kove Rally, let me know down in the comments, because that is something that I can make happen. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing and leave a comment. Have a good one.